welcome to the Sheep's Garden. I'm Elizabeth, and today I thought I would talk a little bit about my Ashford Wild Drum Carder. It's the smaller drum carder that Ashford does, but with longer tines, so it makes narrow and kind of fat bats. It's supposed to be for doing art yarns, so the idea is that you can mix in lots of different things like feathers and bits of scraps of yarn. I don't use it so much for that, but I do like the way it makes a very fat bat. So I bought this towards the end of 2010, and that year my husband and our daughters, we all went to go and live in the south of England with my mother, to help her look after and care for my grandmother, who was been suffering from dementia for quite a few years, and it was getting harder and harder for my mother to look after her alone. So we went. It just so happened that year was convenient for us to take a break from our time here in Chile, and we traveled to the UK and spent 2010 in England. And when I first arrived in England, I didn't bring a spinning wheel with me, but I managed to find a second-hand Ashford traditional, which I immediately bought. So I had a spinning wheel to spin with. And my grandfather used to knit, so I had his old yarns and needles and things. So I had knitting I could do. But I realized I was really burnt out from the work on the farm. At that time, on the farm, we had cows and pigs and sheep and goats and rabbits, chickens, geese. We had all sorts of animals. We even had a horse for a while. And the cows my father had because he wanted to try and make cheese, do cheese production. So for a while we had quite a few cows. And before we left to England, I was in the process of selling them off because it just wasn't working, the cheese business. And that was hard. It was hard selling to people who said they wanted milk cows, they wanted cows for milk, but when really they just wanted to butcher them for meat. And they would come back a week later and say, oh, the cow fell down and we had to kill it, so do you have another one? And I couldn't not sell them because we were trying to sell them and get rid of them. But it broke my heart that they were just being sold for meat, when they weren't even really, meat cows. They were dairy cows. So it was getting hard for me. It was getting painful, and I never trained in livestock. Everything I learned on the farm, I learned from experience or from vets giving me advice, or from the local people. So there was all sorts of things I learned and made mistakes, and it was just getting tiring. It was getting hard, and it just felt hard. So when I got to England and I had about 6 months, I didn't even want to think about the farm or wool or animals or anything. I just, I had my spinning wheel and I had the yarn from my grandfather's collection, and I just would spin and knit and do my things, but not think about it in any kind of future. But as the time went on and I started, because we were in Devon, we would go to craft fairs and farmers markets, and I would see how farming could be done. Or I got better ideas what people would do with the yarn, making sweaters, and how they kept their sheep and things. And so slowly, the inspiration started to come back to try and really do something with my sheep and with the yarn that I was hand spinning. And it took a while, but it was coming back. And so as we were getting closer to our return to Chile, I was thinking of ways I could do more stuff with my yarn. And so one of the things was buying this small Ashford Wild Carder so that I could process the wool a little bit quicker than just with the hand carders that I had. And it works well, but I think it's better for blending. I don't think this carder, especially being so small, is the best carder for cleaning dirty wool. Yeah, I used it and it worked. But I also made myself a picker, which has big nails in it and pulls the wool apart. And that helped to loosen up and to get rid of a lot of the dirt before I put it through the carder or through my hand carders. So I was getting inspired, and I started a blog before we left England so that I could start writing about my yarn experiences and how I was moving forward. And when we got back to Chile, I also found that there was a lot more interest in hand-spun yarns. Before, there wasn't that kind of interest. So it gave me hope. It gave me hope that there was maybe a future for what I was doing. And it's taken me a while, but I'm still doing this. And when I look at my little wild carder, I remember that hope. Ciao.